So the house is quiet, the kids are out building their own lives, and you're left staring at rooms that used to be full of noise and schedules and purpose and even maybe a little crazy. Maybe you feel relief, maybe you feel a little lost, or more than likely, you probably feel both. Today, I want to talk about what happens when the nest is empty, but your heart still longs for direction. This isn't the end of your usefulness. It's just the beginning of a new chapter. And yes, God still has big plans for you, my Taken Back Happy friends. Hi, friends. Welcome to Taking Back Happy. I'm your host, Gina Granville, God's girl, retired homeschool mom of 4, empty nester, Gigi, essential oil and exercise enthusiast, Christian life coach, and someone who's taken back her own happy. I know many of you feel exactly like me in these midlife years, a sort of loss of direction, but way too young and vibrant to sit on the porch and just watch life go by. What if you could reimagine your life, finding deep joy, renewed passion, and purpose, and plenty of adventure in these midlife years? If you're ready to rediscover God's joy and purpose in this season of life, throw on those walking shoes, pop in those earbuds, and join me right here as we take back happy together. Hey friends, and welcome to Taking Back Happy. Today we're going to talk a little bit about when your nest is empty, but your life isn't necessarily. So let's get right into it. I have 3 points I want to cover with you today. The first one is it's okay to acknowledge the loss and, just recognize that the gap we have there too. The second thing I want to talk about is we're just going to release that pressure to have it all figured out. And lastly, we're going to look at how we can rediscover purpose through God and community. Let's get right into it. And let's start with an acknowledgement of loss, an acknowledgement of a gap or something that is missing. Many times as moms, we built our schedules, our friendships, even our identity around our kids and what they needed. So especially as a homeschool mom, I think we really get wrapped around the axle sometimes because we're with our kids, during all that time during the day. We may not see them at night because at night they're probably, out with their friends or working or, playing sports or whatever. But during the day, we have that extra time with them. And so it really is a big loss when all of a sudden they are no longer there. We can choose to acknowledge it, or we can choose to ignore it and just, ignore that elephant in the room. I remember pouring my whole heart into homeschooling, especially when we got to those high school years, right? Getting them ready for college and making sure they were prepped to do whatever they wanted to do, whether it was to work or, get an internship somewhere or go into the military or go to college, whatever it would be. I remember I really, really put a lot of time into that. And I made sure I crossed every T, I dotted every I, because I wanted them to be able to walk through any door that they wanted to walk through. And that was super, super important to me. I had goals. I had all, things that we wanted to meet, things I wanted them to accomplish and be able to do as they grew up and went out into the world. But I didn't really consider how it would affect me when they did exactly that. The thing that I was actually, teaching them to do and trying to help them be prepared for, when they actually got there and did exactly what I really wanted them to do, it really was a great, great loss to me. Often when our kids launch out into the world, we can be left thinking, okay, so now what? And instead of looking at this okay, what a failure. I shouldn't have put all this time into this. I shouldn't have, wrapped myself around them so tightly or whatever. And that could be true, but I don't want us to think of it as a failure. I want us to think of it as years of devotion. This was something important to both me and to them. And so I want us to kind of reframe that a little bit instead of like, oh man, why did I do that? Now look where I am. I want us to think more like, okay, I did exactly what I was wanting to do. I prepared them the way I felt like they needed to be prepared. And so it's not a failure. It's just a little bump in the road as we're trying to figure out this next step. I really like in the Bible, in the book of Ecclesiastes, it says there is a time for everything. And I love that. It's when we look at this in this like big picture, it's just simply a new season. We're at a new season. It's not the end of our usefulness. Our best days are not behind us. Our best days are today and looking forward. Which brings me to my second point. A lot of times we think, okay, my kids have graduated. They've all moved out of this home. They've all gone on to do whatever they're doing next. And now we're like, I need to have it all figured out. What am I going to do? And there's like so many different options on the table. And especially when we're like in our 40s, 50s, 60s, you know, there's like a pressure that comes along with that. There's a pressure that feels a little bit heavier because not only do you have to figure out where you're going to go from here, but now you feel like, wow, this is so different than when I was 18. When I was 18 or 20 or 25, I still had to figure it all out, but I had like so many years ahead of me. And now when we're 50 years old and we're looking forward, we're like, okay, I'm more than halfway home probably. So, we have fewer years ahead of us. So it seems like if we make a mistake or if we choose the wrong direction or we choose the wrong career or volunteering or whatever we plan on doing next, it could cost us a lot more. I remember sitting in my dad's hospital room, and when he was in the hospital and he had cancer and he was basically dying of cancer, I was up there and I would just hang out in his room with him. And we would just talk about everything and talk about nothing. And one day, I had I think my oldest son was graduating that year, actually. So this was 2017, not my oldest son. I'm sorry, my second to oldest son. And he was graduating in 2017. My dad was in the hospital at that time. And my youngest son had, like a few more years. He had like 3 more years at that point. And I remember talking to him about what I wanted to do next. And he was asking me, what do you want to do next? I'm like, well, I don't know. I think. And I started looking in the paper and I started looking at jobs that were advertised. And, we were just like shooting ideas around. I was like, maybe I'll be a counselor. Maybe I'll do something and help children. And I was just like grasping at straws, going with the thing that I was most comfortable with, which was, working with kids because I'd been working with kids, the past so many years as I was homeschooling and raising my own kids. But it was just so funny. Like he would ask me some more direct questions, why do you think you want to do that? And da da da. And I had really had no idea. I knew I was going to do something. I just didn't know what I was going to do next. But the cool thing is that God doesn't work on our timelines. Thank goodness. He's still writing our story, even as we discover it, even as we look into it, even as we try new things. He's writing our story. He's writing that next chapter. It's great to have goals. It's great to have a plan. But honestly, we don't have to have a full 10-year plan all laid out. We just need the courage to take one faithful step at a time. We can pray. We can seek God. We can try new things. We can experiment and explore things that make us feel happy or make us feel fulfilled or feel like we have a new purpose. Proverbs 16:9 says, in their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. So release that pressure to have it all figured out. That figuring out part is going to come over time. Just trust yourself, trust God, try new things. Which brings me to my third point. We're going to rediscover our purpose through God and through community. So now is a great time to explore our gifts, our talents, our callings, all those things we may have been putting on hold while we were raising kids. This is a great time to check those things out, pull them out of the closet, dust them off, and let's try out a few new things. After my kids graduated from high school, I still considered myself a homeschool mom. Even at that time, I was teaching other homeschool moms. I even made a course, believe it or not, of how to homeschool through high school. And so I kind of considered myself sort of an authority in the subject. And, if you asked me who I was like, oh, I'm a homeschool mom. But, our identity isn't necessarily in that. And a lot of times we even change it slightly. I was a homeschool mom, or I'm a former mom of like school age kids. We put it in some like framework of that. But in reality, we're just a child of God with purpose, right? Whether we're a mom, whether we're single, whether we're married, whether we're working, whether we're not working, whether we're starting a business, whatever we're doing, we are a child of God with purpose. One of the things that's really helped me is surrounding myself with other women who are in the same season. We're cheering each other on, we're challenging each other. We're not competing with each other, but we're putting it out there. We understand what we're going through because we've all been in the same boat. But now we're moving forward and we're trying new things. And that's one of the things that I've really gotten out of life mentoring school. In addition to getting my life coaching certification and master's certification, it's just been so great to be around women who are going through the same things. Women who are empty nesters, women who are trying to figure out what's next, women who are taking care of elderly parents, because you're all in that same sort of season. There might be a wide range of that. You could be, 40 years old, you could be 50, 60, you could be in your 70s and still be trying to figure out, what's next. But having a community around you is so, so powerful. We have these like small group encounter classes that meet once a week. And there's like a facilitator that will run the, meetup. And we just all hop in there and we talk about just different random things. We can get some coaching, some self-coaching. We can go over like different topics, things like that. We can just take time and be introspective and do it as a group and, cheer each other on and things like that. But another thing I found really, really interesting is we have these life coaching calls in life mentoring school, and they will be like a big group of people, and one person at a time will be getting coached. And there's so many times, no matter what the topic is, when you have someone that's in this midlife age, they'll be talking about it. And underneath, it'll come out like, oh, my daughter just left for college. Or, oh, I wanted to do this thing, but I wasn't sure what to do. And, it just keeps coming up. It's like an underlying theme that will just keep coming up for us. I also teach like wellness classes once a month. And so I have like a community, a local community that'll meet up through those. And that's also been such a blessing because there's a little bit wider range of ages in this group, but it really helps me because people that have already been there, done that, who are a little bit older, they share their wisdom, they share their knowledge, and a lot of us are about the same age or same stage in life. Our kids are moved on. We're trying to figure out what's next. What's this going to look like as we go into the future? Is there going to be some traveling involved? I always hope there's going to be traveling involved in my in my future. Is there going to be, a relationship? Is there going to be a job, or is it going to be a business? What's it going to look like? And it's just really great to have community to live this out with. So as we try to rediscover our purpose through God and through community, one of the things just to remember is God's already goes before us. He is definitely before us, making a plan and, revealing a purpose. And in Jeremiah 29:11, it says, "For I know the plans I have for you." So God still has fresh assignments for us. He still has plenty of purpose. It could be in being a grandparent. It could be in so many different things, but that purpose is not any less important than working at a corporate job or any less important than, starting a major business. Every one of us has a specific plan, a specific purpose, something that brings us joy and brings other people joy. So, my Taking Back Happy friends, I want us to remember that our kids may have stepped into their next chapter in life, but guess what? So have we. God hasn't run out of ideas for our lives. He hasn't missed our best years. They're still ahead of us. As my friend Susan always says, my favorite age is right now. So we're going to remember his promise in Jeremiah 29:11. Again, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. I love that. Let's walk boldly forward today. We can acknowledge the loss. It's a real thing. We can acknowledge it. We can feel all the feelings. We can process those feelings and move on with our lives. We can, realize that, okay, there is a cool plan for me and I can figure it out, but we can just take that pressure valve off so we don't have to have it all figured out this second. We can seek God and his plans and also, have some friends around us that are in the same stage of life. They're walking through these same things. Let's walk forward, not in fear of what's gone, but in faith of what's coming. Because, girl, God's got big plans for you. And as a Taken Back Happy family, we are all in this together. If this podcast blessed and encouraged you today, I'd love for you to share it with your friends. You can take a screenshot and share it in your stories, but make sure you tag me at Gina Granville so we can connect. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Make sure you join my Taken Back Happy Facebook group. I'll meet you back here soon, and we'll continue taking back happy together.